A lot of us think resilience means being able to take more, work harder, push through, tough it out, handle it yourself. But what if some of the things we associate with resilience are actually the exact things that eventually burn us out? Tonight, we're talking about what real resilience looks like, how you actually build it, and why the strongest people in teams aren't necessarily the ones who can endure the most. They're the ones who know how to adapt. Our guest tonight is Jessper, a company culture and leadership development consultant, certified HR professional, executive coach, and endurance athlete. After growing up with asthma, Jessper transformed himself into a marathon and ultramarathon runner, completing 16 marathons while building a career devoting to helping people and organizations become stronger. Through Family Lead Management Consulting, Jessper now helps leaders develop resilient, high-performing teams by creating greater clarity, connection, accountability, and purpose. Jessper, welcome to the Masters of Wellness podcast. So excited to have you, man.
Chuck, Ed, thank you for having me. Pleasure to join you tonight.
Out there in sunny California, man.
It is warm out here this summer. Los Angeles area.
Okay, all right. So the busy town.
A little bit, but it is warm out here this summer.
I bet. Well, thanks for wearing a jacket for us. You look nice. So Jessper, before we get into leadership and resilience, I want to understand you. You grew up with asthma and eventually became someone who runs marathons and ultramarathons. What the hell happened there? How does that happen?
Absolutely. It's such an I'm glad you brought that up. For me, I would say growing up at a young age, I would say maybe I was at the age of 8. I was diagnosed with asthma, and at that time, I didn't know what it was. I was just breathing weird, and strange to me, but at the time, still trying to comprehend what that was. But over time, I realized that was something that people can essentially have lower expectations for you, because now you have some type of health condition, and people want to take things easy for you. So especially growing up with my parents, when they found out I had asthma, they didn't want to put too much pressure for me. They always encouraged me to stay indoors, stay away from pet fur, stay away from pollen, stay away from dust. And I understand that from a parent's perspective, they just want to keep us safe. But at the same time, growing up, I realized it reminds me of that metaphor where you have that kid in their room, they're looking outside, and all the other kids are having fun, where they're running around, playing soccer, running in circles, just enjoying the time of their life. And that kid who's just stuck inside, feeling down on themselves. Growing up, that metaphor, I didn't want that type of lifestyle. And then as I got older, I was inspired by people who accomplished major goals, and more specifically, marathon runners. And I remember telling myself one day, Jessper, I'm going to run a marathon. And at the time, of course, I didn't think too much of it, but I did take it step by step. I just remember the first day just putting training shoes on, and then next day putting training shoes on, and then taking a few steps. Next day, training shoes, few steps more. Next day, training shoes, few steps, then a few steps more, and then a few steps more. Eventually, I signed up for my first 5K, and when I reached that finish line, it gave me a sense of excitement. So I continued to push forward, moved up to that 10K level, and when I reached that finish line, of course, it was getting a little bit more difficult on, physically and also on my lungs, but reaching that finish line gave me that sense of excitement. So I signed up for my first half marathon, and of course, more mileage, so a little bit more pressure, but I took it step by step, and when I reached that finish line, it gave me a sense of excitement. And when it came to training for the full marathon, that made me a little bit more nervous, because this was just at a higher level where I had to really take my training more seriously. But I remember my first full marathon that I signed up for, it was the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon. And I remember race day. Races start early, so this was probably around 6 a.m., 7 a.m. I just remember being at the starting line, looking at the distance, telling myself, Jessper, what in the world did you just sign up for? A little bit nervous just looking at the distance, trying to figure out, what in the world did I get myself into? But as soon as the race started, again, this sense of taking it step by step and then going through the race, a little bit more pressure was starting to build up over time. Reminded myself to trust my training, but continue to push forward. As I got to the later miles, mile 20, 21, 22, that's where I started to feel a lot more pressure. But I remember the quote from Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm paraphrasing. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. And not to say that I was crawling. I did not crawl during the marathon, but it was just a reminder for myself to just keep pushing through. And then as we got to the later mileage, mile 25, 26, a lot more pressure. But when I finally crossed that finish line, that sense of joy, excitement, enthusiasm really just overcame me. And such a joy to accomplish something that big after growing up with such an interesting lifestyle with asthma and all those expectations that tend to bring you down. But for me to just keep going, that's why I find that resilience.
That's inspiring. Yeah, for sure. So did you have any asthma attacks as you were building up this endurance?
For me, it's something I tried to avoid. I took it step by step. I knew running 26.2 miles overnight was not something that you should do. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's not
No one should
recommended.
do that.
So, especially for me, I just took it step by step, really reflected how my body was feeling on the trails and adjusted accordingly. So setting a really comfortable pace, but not too slow that takes forever, but at a pace where I can manage myself in moving forward.
For sure. So what did completing your first marathon prove to you?
For me, it reminded me this sense that major goals can be accomplished when you really put in the time, energy, and effort. Take it step by step. No significant goal is going to happen overnight or magic. But if you trust the process and keep pushing through, not giving up, you can slow down. That's okay. But to not give up, that's when you can realize that major goals can be accomplished. And that was the lesson that I learned from that experience. It is building the capacity over time when you really embrace that process. Physically, you're making your body stronger, and mentally, you're preparing your mind for that. So it is embracing that process.
And I think anybody listening, which by the way, like, subscribe, share, this is going to resonate with a lot of people, not just people who you know that want to do marathon races, because there's so many lessons within what Jessper has gone through early on with his marathon that I'm sure has just been woven into your career and what you help other people with, and which we're definitely going to get to. So stick around. So Jessper, your big idea is resilience is not something you either have or lack. It is something you build by consistently turning challenges into opportunities for growth. I love that idea that resilience is built because people often talk about it like a personality trait, So what actually makes someone more resilient?
Absolutely. And on that note, when people think of resilience, they think of this quality or trait that you either have or you don't have. But in reality, when we look at resilience, it is something that people can build over time. And when we look at that sense of resilience, I like how you said that there's this misconception that resilience is a personality trait. In reality, it's more of, I would say, character and I would say leadership growth as well. Because for an individual, when it comes to resilience, it's this sense of, again, embracing this process of growth. And when it comes to what makes a person more resilient, it's that person who has embraced that sense of moving forward, that sense of continuous improvement, that sense of self-development. So when it comes to a person and describing them as resilient, again, it's not a personality trait. It's more of someone who has embraced the idea that they're committed to their own growth.
Beautifully put. Yeah. So do you think resilient people experience less stress, or are they responding to stress differently?
That's an excellent question. And I would say they're probably responding to stress differently because everyone expresses stress. And for someone who has a greater sense of resilience, when they come across stress in their life, they tend to remind themselves that they've been through challenges. And for that reminder to stick, it really is a great piece of information for them to realize that they can continue to push forward. So for a person who is essentially less resilient, when it comes to stress, it's because they just have not built that capacity to withstand the challenges. But again, as we mentioned earlier, when it comes to resilience, it is something that we build. So people who haven't had that capacity yet still have the opportunity to gain that resilience within them.
Interesting. So, in your opinion, what behaviors make someone less resilient over?
So when it comes to being less resilient, I would say it's this sense of fear where they're dealing with challenges and perhaps it's the unknown, and the unknown probably continues to scare them, and the individual might continue to step back. But on the other hand, when we do talk about gaining that resilience, the people who do embrace it, they see fear not as something that's necessarily scary. Of course, they can still have that sense of fear, but for them, they're still going to push forward and see what's out there, explore, embrace that sense of curiosity to see what it can do to make them better.
Interesting. So, is there a difference between mental toughness and resilience, in your opinion?
I love that question. So when it comes to mental toughness, it is this sense of someone who is really looking forward to a challenge. And when something unfamiliar comes their way, they're more likely to take it head on. And when it comes to resilience, it's more of this sense of they might not be ready to face the challenge head on directly. However, they're still open to seeing it as an opportunity to overcome another challenge and develop more growth within themselves. So I love that question between mental toughness and resilience. There are some overlapping similarities between them, but I would say when it comes to resilience, it's that understanding that imperfection is still okay. However, moving forward is still the option on the table.
Hmm. Yeah. Resilient people are going to choose that versus mental toughness are just going to plow through it.
Plow through. Essentially,
Mhm.
essentially. I
Mhm.
know it's not necessarily a perfect science, but
Yeah. Yeah.
a general perspective
You
between
said
the
one of
two.
the biggest misconceptions is that resilience means push harder, ignore discomfort, handle it yourself. Why is it that's such a dangerous definition of resilience?
Absolutely. So when it comes to resilience, there's this, there could be this view that some people might interpret it as being invincible, unstoppable, unshakable. In reality, it's not, I wouldn't really make that direct link because when it comes to resilience, it's more about being more frank and direct with the challenges you're facing with. When it comes to this sense of unshakability, people think, oh, since you're invincible, you can do whatever you want, just keep plowing through. When it comes to resilience, real resilience, it's more about that thinking of, okay, I'm dealing with a challenge. It might not be easy. It might scare me a little, or it might scare me a lot. However, I'm going to use this opportunity to see what insights, what knowledge, what wisdom can I take from this experience and collect those lessons along the way. So when it comes to resilience, again, it's not this sense of pushing harder. It's not the sense of ignoring discomfort. Because if people embrace this misconception, this myth of invincibility, that can lead to burnout because someone's really just putting themselves in a position where they're experiencing pain for the sake of pain. And that is not resilience. Resilience, on the other hand, is embracing challenges, embracing obstacles for the benefit of growth and opportunities for learning.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between those two.
Okay, so if you're listening or watching this and you're resonating with what Jesper is saying, and you want to be more resilient instead of strong, or instead of maybe stubborn or mentally tough, don't worry. Stick around. We're going to get to some steps that you can implement. Jesper's going to share some secrets, right, of how he helps folks with this particular topic. So stick around. We're going to get to that. I'm curious, though, Jesper, if you could, when you'd be willing to share with the audience, what maybe, you've shared your marathon journey, but what else in your life, maybe something recent, where you said, pause. I got to figure out if I'm going to choose to go through this with mental toughness or if I'm going to go through this the right way. Like, what can you give us an experience, maybe something else in your life outside of just the marathon that you've realized that you have this nailed down?
Absolutely. And I would say we can reflect back to the days of the pandemic, COVID. For a lot of people, it really stopped them in their tracks as they were trying to figure out what to do. And for me, reflecting back on March 2020, in the beginning, in a sense, it did stop me in my tracks because it was an unpredictable moment. We were trying to figure out what to do next because life, as we perceived it as normal, that sense of normal was thrown out the window at the time. And for me to figure out what to do next, in the beginning, I did struggle because, again, we were in an unfamiliar situation with unfamiliar moving pieces. But I took that up as an opportunity. Now that we were spending time at home, this lockdown, I didn't see it as a moment to just sit back and just stare at the ceiling and just hope for a magic to happen. For me, now that we were spending time in lockdown, I used it as an opportunity to continue to learn. So I'm an avid reader, and then I really took that time to just learn books. I took the time to learn some vocabulary in foreign languages and continued to, since we were still able to go outside. I mean, not to hang out with other people because of the lockdown, but go out for a walk, go out for a run. So I continued to stay committed to my training. So for me, it was an opportunity to learn and stay active and committed to my long-term goals.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So looking at the pandemic, I didn't view that as an obstacle that would stop us in our tracks. It was an opportunity to find ways to get creative.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you had a situation that happened to almost literally every one of us, right? And because of the experience of resilience you've built up over the amazing challenges you've put yourself through, right? Made yourself more resilient, more stronger. You had a different lens that you were looking at that challenge through because of the past experiences you put yourself through here. And because people weren't building that resilience prior to COVID, they didn't have that lens of, let me look at what's best about this situation. And you did. So I love that because that's a great lesson for all of us. You're just stacking the wins every single day because you get to make a choice every single day to be resilient. Because if you do it well today and you do it well tomorrow, next thing you know, it's a whole different level of resilience later.
It keeps everything in perspective.
Yeah, no doubt. So at what point does perseverance turn into stubbornness? Like, and how does someone recognize?
And this idea of perseverance and continuing to push through, I would say it can lean into this side of stubbornness when it no longer benefits you. If you're doing something out of habit, but it's not really bringing about a positive impact in your life, that's where it can lead to stubbornness. On the other hand, when we are embracing perseverance and it is leading to positive change and impactful results, that's where perseverance is actually healthy.
Got it. So, you know who I think is an interesting group in this perspective?
Who would be an
That
interesting group?
probably applies to the most in the world. high performers, like entrepreneurs, executives, definitely athletes. I mean, heck, even parents, people every day, like that everyone relies on every day. I'd imagine this is really resonating with them. And there's probably a lot of things that you can help them do and figure out by listening to this to get more into that resilience phase and stack those wins every single day instead of adding to the stress level. And that's just going to add to the burnout. But also the stress is a killer, literally. So, so many other bad aspects of stress in your life. So you do it for your own health. This is a wellness podcast, right? So, if there's something that's leading to stress in your life, which could very well be how we handle these challenges in life, this is going to be a great episode for you, for us to learn how to cope with that just by looking at it through this lens that Jesper's talking about. So does success sometimes train people into these unhappy or unhealthy forms of resilience?
It can, especially when we see how success is defined in society. And when we look at, again, in reality, everyone has their own definition of success individually. But when we look at the society level, we tend to define success as having more, being more, and doing more. And the danger with that is when we step into more, that can just lead to more challenges and more obstacles and just putting more on our plate. And that really defeats the purpose of what we were trying to achieve in the first place. Because when it comes to success, yes, the goal is to be happy and satisfied and experience joy in life. But if the process to get there is just adding more to our plate, it really makes it more difficult than it really needs to be.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe said in a different way, the business, the career, whatever that aspect is that they're tackling to be successful and to fill that void becomes their vehicle versus why they did it in the first place.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I meet so many people I mean, you could, heck, throw the whole world in there like that, because how many of us get stuck in just a regular job, whether we're fulfilled with it or not, that ends up becoming our whole life. And for so many reasons, we just get stuck in that rat race. There's different rat races. Some are very large cages and some are small. It depends on what you want, what you got into. But like, how do you stop spinning on that hamster wheel?
Yeah, it's that hamster wheel. And I would say to a degree, it could be complacency where people have been through a situation for so long that they start to feel comfortable. But over the long run, that sense of comfort can keep them trapped in their comfort zone. And when that comfort zone sticks, it really makes it difficult to really dig out of that hole. And that's what continues to reinforce that hamster wheel over time.
Yeah, you see that with people's health too. Get comfortable not really exercising that much. And then you you need to go back to the gym and you get sore, so you get comfortable not going back because you just, your subconscious is like, ouch, no, I don't want to do that. So this applies to every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, especially when it comes to health, it tends to feel easier to just sit back and stay still. It feels easy. And then again, as you said, when we go to the gym or when we lift a heavy weight, that sense of pain starts to bring this reminder that, oh, that was painful. Why are we putting ourselves into this? So we revert back to just staying still.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if we don't overcome that challenge that's in the way, we'll get stuck in that comfort zone. But on the other hand, when we do step out, step up, and really embrace that quote unquote pain, which is not really pain, it's that opportunity and challenge to really grow. But when we do step into that, that really starts to get us out of that hamster wheel and do new, better, and more productive things with our lives.
Again, you just have a different lens, and I hope that the people listening to this that clearly they're listening to content like this because they want to feed their brain, they want to feed their body with information, right? But information only goes so far. Action is where you see results. So I hope they realize like the biggest thing that I'm picking up here, maybe hopefully they're picking up the same thing. Jesper, you have a way of looking at things completely different. And it is, I think, completely because of how much you've continued to push yourself. Your brain just works in that way. And you probably have a lot more fulfillment out of every little thing in life. And you're grateful more than most people, I would imagine. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
Chuck, I
I
like
mean,
how I was just gonna add in that this sense of gratefulness. Yeah, when it comes to, especially on our topic today on resilience, you do see your challenges as something to be thankful for because it's given you that opportunity for growth. So that was just something I wanted to throw in real quick.
I was just, no, the only thing I was going to say there is I'm just impressed by you, man. Seriously. Your story is inspiring. Your story, even if you just talked about marathon running, there's so many applicable life lessons in that. I wanted to ask you, are you still running?
I am, I am
All
still
right.
running.
When's your next
So
marathon?
I'm planning to. Well, my go-to is the marathon in my hometown. So I grew up in the Santa Clarita Valley. So that is the next one on my mind.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. You ever done a Spartan race?
Not yet, but those are interesting.
They're fun. I did my first one last year.
How was your experience?
It's a lot of fun. I did cross country in high school to get ready for baseball tryouts because I heard that it was horrible and you wouldn't make it through because they really worked you hard. So I had to get the endurance up. So I put myself through cross country and never ran anything before that. And I ended up being pretty good because I was the little short, skinny catcher. But that never really necessarily I never got the runner's high. Never really enjoyed running. Like I love weight training. I get a lot of endorphins out of weight training. Running for me, not so much. So when you go to the Spartan races and you get to run for a little bit, then do an obstacle course, run for a little bit and do an obstacle course, it just be occupied. If that makes sense, So and your work and there's different challenges in there. So it's a lot more to me like, you have a lot of mental challenges in a marathon, especially those ultra marathons. But to be able to do like to preoccupy your whole body with different stuff, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to take that spear and even hit the target. Because if you didn't do that, you had to do like 50 burpees and then you can keep going. So I was like, I don't want to do the burpees. And then when I was doing the practices, I missed every single time. But I nailed it on my first try. So I'm going to go this November to the Fenway Park, Boston Red Sox Stadium. They're having a Spartan race there.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. You should come, man. You should come. So I had a question for you. So for you, it's similar to the question I had earlier, but angled a little different. Like, have you ever had a period in your life where you thought you were being resilient, but looking back now, you were just grinding yourself into the ground? You have any
Oh,
examples
that is an
you can
excellent
share?
question. And I would say yes. When I reflect on the early part of my career, essentially quote unquote climbing that corporate ladder, I realized I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And of course, when you put a lot of pressure on yourself, you start experiencing that sense of real burnout. And that is what I was experiencing in the earlier part of my career. And I realized and reflected upon it. And upon reflection, it's something I eventually had that realization where it just wasn't really worth it, because if you're trying to achieve something but you're just exhausted all the time, is the fulfillment really there? So that's the big question that pops up. Is the fulfillment really there if you're just exhausted all the time to try to achieve something meaningful?
Yeah. And then what else are you sacrificing in your life that you would be more fulfilled or enjoy doing?
Absolutely.
You have kids?
Not yet.
Okay. Not yet. All right. I don't want to ask this question because you're never supposed to ask another person this, but we're both guys here. I'll ask you, how old are you?
I'm in my 30s.
Okay.
So late
All right.
30s.
All right. Yeah, you plenty of time, man. I didn't have my first kiddo until I was 34. I was just doing the math. That's actually wrong. It was 36.
But you've
I
got two
always
kids now,
forget how
right?
old I am. 43.
You've got two kids now, right?
Two. Yeah. 7 and 5. Yep. So
What's that like?
it's very fulfilling. The most fulfilling thing I've ever done outside of being a husband and outside of doing business and helping people. You know, you get to see these little human beings grow up right in front of your face. And it's not, I've had to learn it's not what you say that matters, it's what you do that matters. So they're seeing and they're watching dad's resilience and seeing, they don't necessarily probably know anything that's going on, right? Like they don't know how dad's business operates. They see that dad's doing a podcast every Thursday, but they don't necessarily know the details, but that doesn't matter. They get to see the consistency. They get to see that if it matters to dad, then it's important. So yeah, I've noticed looking back, especially when you get your first and have your first child, your why is deeper and it's different. I could definitely in the past, and I think maybe there's a lot of other people out there like this. If I had aspirations and goals, I would be the guy I would do whatever it takes to get there. Long hours and grind, grind, grind. I'm the definition of that earlier picture, man. And it was determination no matter what, no matter how many no's, no matter what obstacles I got to jump through. I chose to do this. I'm going to make it happen. And that can be a strength. I think it is certainly a nice attribute to have. I would hire any employee that had that attribute, and if you're out there, let me know. I'm looking for you. I know Jasper's looking for you too. So, but at the same time, you got to be careful with that because it does lead to that burnout. And I've been there several times in my life and you didn't even know what it was. I didn't know. I just thought I lost interest. And it wasn't that I lost interest. I lost energy. I lost fuel.
Exhaustion.
I didn't separate. I didn't throw in and mix into things that I enjoyed. I had this like mental race in my head since I graduated college that I'm racing to something, and then when I have the kids and the family, then I can take the foot off the gas, you know? And then when the kids come and you're still racing because you haven't like the finish line continues to keep getting further and further away because your expectations get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you realize, oh, wow, all right, I need a lot more actual coming in than I thought when I was in college. When you graduate college, you're like, 35,000 is nothing or a lot, and then you realize as a family man, like I need a lot more than that, So that finish line continues to keep growing and growing and growing or going further away. And then you really have to figure out what matters to you when you have other people that you want to spend your time with. And then, man, do you become way more resilient when other people are dependent on you. So what I was saying earlier, and I was a long way of trying to get to it, is I could easily, even though I have that attribute of, no matter what, I'm going to make sure that I plow through and try to be successful. It was easier to let myself down than to let somebody else. I've always been able to just justify that. I'd beat myself up, of course, right? You didn't hit your goals this week, probably because you went to 2 Oriole games and a Ravens game, and you did those fun things. So it always beats yourself up. But now because I have the kiddos and a spouse and they're depending on me, it's a whole different game. Like I don't want to let them down. So I'm a lot freer with myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I like how you tied all of this to resilience.
That's what it is.
It is.
Yeah. I didn't actually get a little bit more resilient until life really made me become more resilient. So when my son was about 3, he needed a liver transplant. And because I took care of myself for most of my life and I was healthy, I qualified to donate a portion of my liver to be able to save him. So we're liver buddies, as close as can be. And then somehow, even though I went through that whole process and got really, obviously I was very healthy they took a portion of me out and gave it to my son. But yet somehow 2 years later, found out I got thyroid cancer. And then I battled through that, and then all sorts of other stuff from a business standpoint that I don't want to even get into. But yeah, the past 7 years has been nothing but the universe or God or whatever you want to put out there that that you speak to. It's been basically priming me to be resilient.
Yeah. But I
Yep.
would say, it's just tying all this together, it is those bigger challenges, those bigger obstacles that give
Mhm.
you a greater sense of resilience.
No doubt. And I look back and I'm so much more of a stronger male, stronger father, stronger brother, stronger son, stronger husband. I mean, every aspect of what I do is way better. But compared to no definition, I just feel like I have leveled up significantly. Just the confidence level, just the same way when you were running and you went from a 5K to a 10K to the, half marathon to a marathon, like you felt like you were leveling up. You probably didn't look back that too much and say, oh, well, what were my times? My times weren't that great. Like I was slower per mile. Like you didn't probably beat yourself up like that, but you knew you were leveling up because you were doing more. So that's how I feel because of all the stuff I've been through.
Yeah, and on the flip side, imagine if those experiences had not entered into your life, you would have probably been in a situation of another hamster wheel where you were probably
Yes.
in your comfort zone, not
Yes.
really getting that fulfillment. But on the flip side, when we have experienced these challenges, it's given us something to grow from.
100%. I was definitely on a hamster wheel when I went through that stuff with my son, and that woke me up. That got me off my hamster wheel. And then I got on another hamster wheel. you know, the hamster wheel, like I said, it just probably keeps getting bigger, and we learn how to keep it going.
Yeah,
So
but it gives you opportunities to keep growing,
to level up, no doubt, for
level
sure.
up.
So let's get to the fun part, right? 40 some minutes in, I know everyone's sticking around because they want to know how you help people with this. So you have some frameworks, some very simple frameworks, I might say, for dealing with these challenges. You reflect, reframe, and respond. Let's call that R3, right? So let's break those down. Reflect. You say pause and recognize what you're feeling. What the situation is teaching you is what is actually within your control. What is the pause, or why is the pause so important?
Absolutely. So when it comes to a challenging experience or a challenging situation, the initial pain we experience from that, our instinct is to believe that it's just bad. Pain is bad. That's an initial instinct. However, when we do take that time to reflect and take that time to pause, that gives us a moment to really create that space to look back and say, okay, yes, it was painful. It was challenging. It was a difficult obstacle. However, what did I learn from it? What did I capture from that? What insight, knowledge, or a perspective did that give me? Because when we experience a challenging situation, so for example, let's say going to running for me, of course, for someone who's running for the first time, it's going to be painful.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be painful. But when someone is training properly, they realize that those miles are really essentially leveling us up. So giving us those reps to really keep pushing through. So as painful as it might be in the beginning, it's really just building our capacity for the future. So when it comes to reflection and pausing, it is really a moment to look at the challenges and obstacles, and instead of just pointing the finger and instantly labeling it as difficult or bad, it's
Mm-hmm.
really important to take a moment to really create that space between ourselves, between us and that challenge, and to really think about, what am I actually gaining from it?
Yeah, one of my mentors always says to ask the question, no matter what's happening, no matter what situation, no matter what challenge, is what's great about this? Because then you have to answer at least something that's great about it, because the question specifically only gives you one option. So I love thinking about that. What's great about this? And you have to find at least one thing. And then that will actually kind of lead to what you're saying. You'll be able to, that's a pause in itself, just asking that question. So coming up with something that's good about it. And I forget who it is. I want to say it's Bob Proctor. You read a lot, so you might know that he said someone like him says that nothing is good or bad. Everything is how you look at it.
That's right.
Well, so not verbatim, but you know what I'm saying? What's that
Yeah,
quote?
you're on the, and I think Henry Ford was attributed something similar. Whether you're right or wrong, or whether you think you're right, or whether you think it's right or wrong,
You're
you're
right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And if you frame it, we keep talking about lenses today, right? I guess like this is the lens show. If you frame it as, oh my gosh, that was terrible, like can't believe I went through that. Why did my son have to go through that? Why did I have to go through that? All these whys, they're the wrong questions. If I ask the question that's actually going to be productive and give me the correct frame, the frame that I want to look through it, which is how do I get better? How do I even, this situation is this situation. I can't do anything about it, but I can make a decision right now what I'm going to do about it so that tomorrow's better. So that I ask better questions to myself. What's great about this? And that's a different lens you have to put on because you have to answer that question.
yeah. And I would say, pointing to a general example in life, let's say a unfortunate situation was that someone got a flat tire in their car, and instead of seeing that as, oh no, it's the end of the world, perhaps it's an opportunity to learn a new bus route and
Yeah.
find some other ways to get around the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it really is changing that lens and perspective.
Yeah. And you know how I like to look at it when I'm stuck in traffic or I am stuck on the side of the road because I got a flat tire. And this may sound terrible, but that is because there was an accident that was going to occur up there. If I kept going, that would have been me. So I got saved by this thing. So it saved my life. And now I'm
Yes,
looking at that tire completely different.
that's right. And that is that lens that really makes us more grateful.
Mm-hmm. So most people want to probably solve this problem immediately, right? What do we miss when we react before we reflect?
When we react before we reflect, it's when we're doing it based on instinct, we're just doing it based on the first behavior that comes out. And sometimes might not be the best course of action. Because
It's an
if we do take
untrained
that,
behavior, right?
that's right. And if we don't take that time to slow down, we can lead to rushed decisions. We can do something that we didn't really intend to do unless we had actually slowed down and taken the time to think about it. So when we slow down, it really gives us a moment to really consider options and to find better ways to approach a certain situation.
So we sort of skipped back and forth because your first answer made me think of reframe, and I went right there. That's actually number two. So back to reframe again. You encourage people to replace why is this happening to me with how can this challenge me to grow. So I like that question too because the only answer you're going to get from that is the positive, nothing else.
That's right. When it comes to reframe, the initial response that comes out of us is, why me? Why me? Why does this have to happen to me? But if we really look at the big picture, it really can give us an opportunity to learn. And as you said, with your specific flat tire example, if that flat tire did not happen in that situation, you may have been way ahead and actually been involved in some type of other situation that could have been much worse. So instead of reflecting on why me, a much better question to really reflect on the question, is this changing me for the better?
For someone listening that says, okay, this is a bunch of baloney, like, cause that situation still sucks. So how do you reframe it with someone like that, so that they don't feel like they're pretending it doesn't suck?
Absolutely. So when it comes to a lot of difficult situations, yes, the suck is still there. A lot
Yeah.
of painful situations still do suck. However, you have a choice. You can stay in that mindset where everything is difficult. And if you stay in that mindset, you're only reinforcing that belief. On the flip side, if you really embrace that growth mindset, that opportunity for a better outcome, you're giving yourself essentially, on the one hand, a way out, but on the other hand, another opportunity to really explore how you can find something better for yourself. So
Mhm.
again, for people who are really stuck into this idea that pain sucks and that's all there is to it, it's only reinforcing that mindset. And when you do take a healthier approach to seeing pain and seeing challenges and embracing that as a step toward improvement, that's where you'll see healthier, more positive change ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, I challenge anyone listening to do Jesper's exercise. Ask the question, how can this challenge help me grow? Or what's great about this? Same question. Whatever one you like, steal it. It's not proprietary. Okay. You can steal it. It's going to help you. And I bet you, if it's easier now to think and you look back, if it's not a recent pain, to reflect. But what Jesper's coaching us to do now is to do it in the time, in the moment, because there's no reason for you to sit in that pain. And I can promise you from experience myself that if you ask that question almost immediately, and you'll have to remind yourself, maybe write it down, so that you can see it. You'll have to remind yourself to do it when you're in the dumps. But if you truly try to find answers to that question, and you will, and you just focus on those answers, then the other thoughts sort of just quietly go away. They're not all gone. And the more you do it, the less the little guy over here's telling you how bad it sucks, right? And you just keep reframing that question and asking that question. And I can tell you from experience, it's powerful, because just like you're leveling up, running marathons, the more you keep asking yourself that, it is just like muscle memory. The next time something happens to you that you did not want to have happen, whether it's catastrophic or just really frustrating, what's great about this? There's always something. And many times there's always many, many things that you can answer to that. And that list gets longer the more practice you get. So then it just
Absolutely.
changes. Like I look at this like, that follow the yellow brick road. You have a path that you can go down. You choose pain or you choose growth. You have a choice. It's all about the questions that you're asking yourself. And questioning why is this happening to me is never going to give you any good answers.
That's right. And especially when it comes to a specific life example, let's say when people get sick, experiencing the flu. On the one hand, you can remind yourself how much it sucks, stay in bed all day. On the other hand, you can find a more productive way to spend your time. Perhaps you can read a book, listen to an audiobook, watch your favorite TV series that you're trying to binge on. It's a better alternative than reminding yourself how much the flu sucks and staying in bed all day. So that's another specific example that can come up.
Yeah, no doubt.
But
And
is that reframe?
the third R is respond. The final step is choosing one intentional action that moves you forward while also protecting your well-being. Why one action?
Absolutely. So I do want to highlight also the key phrase is intentional. So it's very important for someone to not just take action, but to really do something that's purposeful. And the reason in this case it's just one, it's viewing when we look at this formula, the R3 formula as you referred to, it's really taking things step by step. Because if we're trying to move too fast and put 100 things on our plate, take 100 actions or 100 steps, that's going to bring us back to square one where we're overwhelmed. So it's very important to take one purposeful action that will move us without trying to burn us out.
And do you complicate it when you're recommending what that action should be, or is it just any action?
So specific actions, we want to be more mindful about how it impacts us. So again, it is protecting our physical well-being. So it could be something as simple as perhaps taking a walk, getting that breathing space, being mindful about slowing down. So maybe taking a deep breath, but it is something that does not put us on edge, but reminds us to stay centered and grounded.
Gotcha. Movement.
That's right.
Okay. Can you give us a real world example of someone using reflect, reframe, respond, the R3?
Absolutely. So when you look at this R3 framework, let's use the example of someone who's just had a really long day at work. There was just a lot of pressure. Perhaps the person was just had a lot on their plate. So reflect, that's where the person is pausing and trying to just look at the day and saying, okay, what what benefit came out of that? Although this person may feel exhausted, perhaps with all that went throughout the day, it may have been a very productive day. It wasn't great, but it was productive. That's a great way to look at that. And when we look at reframe, why is this happening to me? Perhaps instead of asking why me, why me, why me, how can this challenge help me? So in this case, when a person just had a long day at work, perhaps it was because a lot of people really depend and rely on this person because this person's reliable. This person can get stuff done. And that's probably why a lot of people really enjoy leaning on this person. And then when it comes to respond, instead of feeling bitter about the long day, perhaps again, just taking a deep breath and reflecting on that experience and realizing that, okay, today may have not been so great, but on the other hand, it was productive and people really do depend on me because they do see me as the person who is getting stuff done. So although there was too much that went into the day, on the other hand, I do see the bright side that maybe it's just because I just happen to be the right person for the role.
Hmm. Yeah. And to your point there too is because they did the R3, now they have a different lens that they're looking at it through, where finding a solution for that is more accurate than finding a solution through the other lens of frustration and anger, because that could lead to a whole different choice. There's two different paths there, and it all has to do with what you're just talking about here. Get there first, and then that path can become more clear. You're thinking with a clearer mind. You're choosing the positive. You're choosing the correct side of your emotions versus the incorrect side of your emotions. So I love that. You shifting here a little bit to you do some work for leaders or with leaders and organizations. How does this work apply to organizations and what led you down that path and how do you help them?
Absolutely. And I do want to make a quick note about the R3 formula. And going back to our specific example, if someone wanted to stick to the other pathway where a bad day is just going to be a bad day, there's nothing to really gain from that. But on the other hand, when that person does really take advantage of that R3 framework, they really do see that something is coming out of that experience, no matter
Mhm.
how challenging it could be. There is
Mhm.
that opportunity to see a brighter way.
Yeah, no doubt. And one feels better than the other.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
choose that one.
And
So
then
did you always were you working with individuals when you started, or did you start with businesses and then realize like obviously you had to work on the individual? Like walk us through how you work with leaders and organizations.
absolutely, that's an excellent question. So, when it comes to resilience, it's important in the business world because there's just so many moving pieces. And when a business is growing, when a business is scaling, they're moving at a much more complex and faster pace. And when they reinforce that intensity, that's just going to lead to exhaustion and burnout. On the other hand, when they do take the proper steps to navigate the business world through resilience, and that is with well being in mind. That gives people an opportunity to remind themselves that it is okay to slow down, to catch their breath again. Because if someone is moving at 150 miles per hour nonstop, they're going to hit a wall. But on the other hand, when they take their foot off the gas, just for a little bit, it'll be easier to steer around to the destination that they're trying to get to.
That's a good one. Yeah, so it all works together as a whole, a synergistic organism, for pun intended. So what is something leaders commonly blame on employees that is actually a leadership or culture?
It, I would say, when it comes to the work that employees do, a lot of it can be communication from leadership. Because when leadership provides a new instruction on a project or process, They believe that when they say it once, that's enough. And there's the assumption that, okay, employees are probably smart enough to take that in. But on the other hand, when that communication rhythm is not in place, where it's consistent, assumptions can start to build and employees are left guessing and making decisions on their own accord. And when that happens, there will be a disconnect with what leaders were trying to say in the first place. So very important when it comes to culture and the work environment that leaders create a space and a system where communication is consistent and aligned with the entire across the entire organization.
That's a good segue because your work focuses heavily on those four things: clarity, connection, accountability, and purpose. So let's run through them quickly. Clarity, what happens inside an organization when people don't clearly understand what success looks like? I know you talked on that a little bit, but maybe another example.
Absolutely. So when it comes to clarity, a lot of business owners have the temptation to provide a task or assignment and assume that since they hired a smart employee, they should know how it should be done. However, that's not always the case. An example I like to bring up is social media. When a business brings on a social media person, their initial goal is, okay, just make us visible in
Yeah.
the
Grow our
social media
champions.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for a social media person to take that instruction, it can be interpreted in so many ways. Maybe a social media person might post just once a month. That's still visibility.
Fair
Maybe
enough.
even once a quarter. That's still visibility. But on the other hand, when the business is very clear and says to the social media person, okay, social media person, we want you to post daily to these specific platforms at this specific time with this specific message, that's going to create a greater sense of clarity. And it puts the social media person in a position where they have a better grasp of knowing what to do next. So clarity is a big piece.
For sure. And that's where it starts, right? So, but if they're not connected, then that's also going to lead to more problems. Why should a business leader care whether employees actually feel connected to one another?
Absolutely. And when it comes to connection, it is removing this sense of isolation. And that is important in today's society, especially post pandemic, where we're still seeing people working hybrid or remotely. And when people feel isolated, they're not going to be as engaged. But on the other hand, when they feel like they have the right support in place and they have opportunities to reach out and be reached out to from their team, that's when they'll really feel this sense of collaboration and community. And when you have collaboration and community, it really makes it easier for everyone to get things done together.
See, yeah, for sure. And accountability has almost become a dirty word on some workplaces, right? So, what does healthy accountability look like?
So when it comes to accountability, the misconception is you do the work that we told you to do. In reality, a healthy sense of accountability is I know what my work entails and I have the opportunity to make worthwhile decisions that are related to what I'm doing, which gives me the opportunity to really own the outcome and results. So when it comes to accountability, it's less of pointing the finger at someone and telling them to do something. It's more of giving them the empowerment to really shape what the result and outcome looks like for what they're trying to achieve.
That's great. And finally, purpose. Question for you: does everybody really need some giant inspirational purpose at work? Or can purpose simply mean like understanding your work matters?
I would say it's a good balance of both, because the why is important. Because without understanding how your work connects to anything, it really is difficult to understand how what you're trying to do connects to anything. But on the other hand, when that is defined, that mission, that purpose, those values, the why, when someone reminds you that it means something, not just for yourself, but for other people, that's when you'll see that greater sense of how what you do really connects to the bigger picture.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So let me throw a tough one at you. Ready? what culture or what cultural problems can't be solved with wellness programs in an organization?
That's an interesting question. So I would say for me, I mean, first and foremost, wellness is very important. But
Agree.
I would say that is challenging because, at least from my perspective, wellness brings such great benefit to an organization. So, I mean, I would say if there's a resistant employee or manager that just doesn't want to participate in any program, I can see where anything wouldn't help that person. But overall, I
Well,
would say that wellness.
I guess it's
Uh,
a trick question because you probably wouldn't be working with that organization because to me, it's the leadership. If the
yeah,
leadership doesn't want to buy in on the fact that wellness is important for their organization, then, and you're going down this organizational wellness path. And what's interesting is I have been organizationally going down the physical wellness path through organizations, right? So it's, hey, you're doing it. Hey, how do we collectively work better as an organization and help take care of, burnout and people's well-being mentally? And obviously the other piece to that, if an organization's working with you and they care about their employees' well-being for the organizational purposes, hey, there's another layer to that, which I don't know if you get into, which is, are we making it easier for them to exercise? Do they know what to do? Are we providing them with resources so that they know what to eat for a good diet? Like, are we giving them wellness resources to prevent them from having the health issues that would prevent them from working? And the path of that example could continue to keep going on and on, but you get what I'm saying. Do you get into that at all when you work with the organizational level?
for me, at the organization level, when it comes to well-being, I understand the physical, the value and importance of the physical. For me, it is more of the psychological and mental well-being. But I would say, especially in today's society, for an organization to outright reject well-being, that will be a detriment to their future.
No doubt. No doubt. And if you own a business, and I'd imagine it's more interesting if I'm the owner of a business and I have 50 or 100,000 employees, I'm probably a lot more intrigued by what you're doing than offering some sort of wellness package to my employees that they may or may never even engage in, right? Because the engagement level from most of those wellness programs are like 1%. So they don't really meet the mark. But one of the avenues that I would love to see is if there was a marriage between the two, because they really do go hand in hand. If the physical is not there, then the psychological would be a little bit more challenging, and then one goes with the other. So you may want to, or you know, may not, but you may want to navigate that a little bit because that would be really cool to see. Because you're probably the entry point of a lot of organizations. It's because to me, I would look at you like I said, like, oh, this is going to be a lot more impactful to do wellness from this perspective, organizational wellness. But if you were able to introduce while doing that, because you're engaged with employees, I'd imagine, like you're with them in group settings, individual settings, team settings, whatever it is, I'd imagine that's probably what you're doing. When wellness programs are brought in that allow people to do health assessments and stuff like that, it's an email. I mean, no wonder they're not getting any engagement. So I'm just all about preventative health because, not to go down this rabbit hole, but, when I got diagnosed with thyroid cancer, I knew that I had issues with gluten and dairy I just had that feeling, right? But why I'd never confirmed that? Silly is like the silliest decision ever, because it was going to require a food sensitivity test for me to actually confirm
Yeah.
that. And when I looked into it years before, just when I thought maybe there's a sensitivity there, it'd be nice to know, it was a couple $100 out of pocket. And I'm like, no, it's not covered by insurance, right? But if I had worked with an organization that offered some of those wellness benefits and it didn't cost me anything or it was less expensive, yeah, I would have pulled the trigger on a food sensitivity test years ago. And guess what? That company that I work for would have had a lot less health claim with me just getting a food sensitivity test than me going through cancer. And I don't know if I could have actually fought off or prevented cancer. Like no one's going to scientifically be able to prove that. But I definitely have strong feeling that the inflammation that was being caused by the gluten and dairy in my body that was confirmed after was a significant contributor to my body attacking the thyroid to begin with, but also the fact that the cancer showed up there eventually too. So long-winded way of kind of going on my little soapbox there. Ed will probably cut that out.
But adding to that, I would say very important for organizations to realize the person as a whole.
100%. All right. So let's get into this meat, man. This is going to be good. So I want to connect to both sides of your life. Imagine you're consulting with a leadership team preparing for an incredibly difficult year. Now imagine you're standing at the starting line of an ultra marathon. Jessper, the leadership consultant.
Say, when it comes to those challenges, especially for an organization that is expecting a challenging year ahead, I would say, on the one hand, do embrace the process because there may be a lot of learning opportunities. And to accomplish that major goal, especially when it comes to ultra marathons and comparing it to the year ahead, keep pushing through. Don't give up. You can slow down if you need to catch your breath. But if you give up completely, that just stops the whole process. But if you keep pushing forward and really making it through the finish line, that's when you'll realize major goals are possible.
Jessper, this has been awesome, man. We're gonna close it out here, and of course, we have to say it. I don't say it nearly enough because when I watch podcasts, it gets annoying. But like and subscribe and share, and there's a lot of people who who should hear this. So if you've gotten anything out of this, please comment below. Do all the above. We're gonna do something really cool right now, something very practical. So if somebody's listening right now realizes I've been surviving more than I've been thriving, you've given us 3 things that they can do this week, right? So action 1, spend 5 minutes every day identifying one challenge and asking, what might this be teaching me? Action 2, choose one habit that restores your energy and actually put it on your calendar. That's great advice. So I think the examples you gave were running, walking, rest, journaling, an honest conversation, whatever works. I think another cool action would be to come back and watch this podcast. So action number 3, ask one trusted person for support instead of trying to solve everything by yourself. I like that one too. So of these 3, which one do you think most people will resist doing?
I would say it could be possible. It could be number 3, asking someone for support, because especially for high performers, they want to continue to carry this image as a high performer. And if they reveal this sense of vulnerability, it might be interpreted as weakness. So there might be some resistance, but I would remind the high performer that if you do seek out help and support, you do have other people to lean on, which will give you more resources that'll make life easier on your time, energy, and effort.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong here, a high performer isn't going to ask downward, they're going to ask upward, right? And if that person is at a higher level, and I don't necessarily mean by position, but to you, maybe they're more accomplished. That's the only reason why you're asking for help, because you feel like they can help you. That shows growth if you're asking for help. So that the story you may be telling yourself that, you are a high achiever and you don't need any help. Well, clearly you do. That's why someone shared this with you today. But at the same time, it actually makes you look really good to ask somebody for help, because you have mentors, or else you probably wouldn't be a high performer anyway. That mentor doesn't know that you're going through what you're going through. So definitely don't feel afraid to ask. So rapid fire here. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Use these only if time allows. So that time is definitely not allowed, but I'm going to do it anyway because I love rapid fire. What do you think about doing, or what do you think about during mile 20 of a marathon?
Mile 20. So at that point of a race, there is a lot of pressure on your lungs, on your legs. But for me, I do remind myself to trust my training. I did put a lot of time, energy, and effort into getting to this point. And when I say this point, mile 20. And for really to honor that. And when I honor that, it really gives me that reminder to keep pushing forward.
What challenge in your life are you grateful happened now, even though you weren't grateful while you were going through it?
So I would say, as we tie into this entire conversation, it was that sense of growing up with asthma because it gave me the choice. Do I see it as something that would keep me down, or do I see it as an opportunity to grow from? And I chose that second path, and I reflect upon it. It's really given me those opportunities to level up.
You're gonna like this next one. What's one habit that makes you noticeably worse when you stop doing it?
I would say, especially when Ed was in the room training, because if I stop training, of course, lose those gains, and in a sense, level down.
Mm, yep. And I bet resting is hard for you.
It can, once in a while,
I bet.
especially during an intense training period.
Hmm. All right. What's one leadership lesson you had to learn the hard way?
I would say when it comes to leadership, I've learned that there is a misconception that leadership is being the person who has all the answers. And I realize that's not the right way to approach it because nobody has all the answers.
Mm-mm.
And when I tried to really promote that concept in the early stages of my career, it would just backfire because as a lead, at that time, leading other people, when you're giving yourself that mindset where you're the one with the answers, people will feel a sense of resistance and disengagement because they're not getting an opportunity to contribute. But on the other hand, when we realize that leaders do not need to have all the answers, give space and opportunity for other people to express themselves. And when you do that, people will embrace the idea that they are being valued.
Absolutely. All right. What are you still working on personally right now?
For me, I mean, this sense of resilience and my running journey, it's going to be an ongoing opportunity for growth. So more marathons are still on my plate. And
All right, Jesper, imagine someone listening tonight is going through one of the hardest periods of their life. They don't need a motivational speech, they need something useful. What would you want them to understand about what they're going through right now?
absolutely. And when it comes to something difficult, maybe a pep talk or a inspirational speech might not work, but it is important to really take that moment to pause and reflect that although the challenge may be difficult, the pain may be very painful, but looking forward, what is this experience trying to teach us? What lessons can we gain from this? Because Chuck, as you shared your story over the past 7 years, as challenging and painful as it was, you got through the other side and collected many valuable lessons along the way. So I would say look at the lessons that we can gain from that.
This podcast is one of them. I started it because of all of it, you know? So this wouldn't exist if it wasn't for all that, for sure. So, Jesper, before we let you go, where can people learn more about you, family lead, management consulting, your coaching, or the work you're doing right now?
Yes, so there are two ways to learn more. The first way is my website, familyconsulting.com. And two, a better way, well, they're both good, but a great way to reach me is through LinkedIn. Search for Jessper Maquindang. Love to have conversations about leadership development, team building, company culture, personal growth, professional development. Absolutely love to have those conversations. Feel free to reach out.
Jesper, thank you for joining us on the Masters of Wellness podcast. Look, if this conversation has really hit your heart, then I would highly recommend that you subscribe, that you like, that you share, and that you go talk to somebody. And maybe that's Jesper. That will, Ed or I would be happy to talk to you. And I really hope everyone got a lot out of that. I know I did. We talked about a very important topic for folks, and so many of us, whether we're high achievers or not, guys, like this is going to hit home for everybody. So take care of yourselves, stay blessed, and we love you. Bye.